Welcome to Chuck Shoe Podcast, and thanks for checking out my little show here. Jeremy Popoff, a guitarist for the band Lit, is here. Before I get to that, I do want to do a quick shout out actually to another podcast, the Rock and Roll Coffee Show. They recently had me on as a guest on their show, so I want to thank Nick and Joe for hosting me. I don't think I said too many stupid things, although my girlfriend said I trashed working in education a little too hard. So just to clarify, I did have some bad experiences with that. But I also met a lot of great people in there as well, and it wasn't all bad. I was definitely soured on working in education. So anyways, check out that episode of the Rock and Roll Coffee Show, and you can also hear their interview with my guest today, Jeremy, from Lit. So in this interview with Jeremy today, he's a blast to talk to. We discuss his whole career from when Lit was a hair band called Razzle, all the way through partying on MTV with Carmen, Electra, and Paris Hilton, to the tragedy that struck the band with their drummer, changing record labels, making a country album, and so much more. This was a lot of fun to talk to Jeremy, and I think you'll agree. Lots of good stories, highs and lows. Here we go. So welcome to the Chuck Shoe Podcast, Jeremy Popoff. Welcome to the show. Popoff, I was like so curious. I had to Google this because I'm like, is that a stage name? But it sounds like it's a Russian name. Is that right?
It's right, yeah.
Very cool. So
it wasn't cool growing up,
Oh, really?
When we were little kids, AJ and I would get teased about our last name quite a bit in elementary school. It's funny because, when people finally knew who we were, and they would think that like, oh, that's where'd you come up with that name? Like, dude, if I was going to make up a last name, you think I'd pick Popoff?
Yeah, it just made me wonder because I was like Lit, like popping off. Like, I don't know. Like, I just thought there was maybe like a stage thing connected to it. I don't know. I was just curious. I never heard that name, but yeah, so solve that puzzle. But yeah, so growing up, your dad was actually a DJ on the radio. So that's kind of how you got into music. And a lot of it was country early on, right?
Yeah. The first couple stations that he worked at were country stations. And that was when, AJ was pretty much, we're talking like early, like one, he was 1 and I was 3, and my dad was just starting out his radio career. And then, a few years later, we moved around a lot as kids because we would kind of relocate to wherever his new radio station was.
Okay.
And then he kind of got his big break in LA radio, and that was a station called, it was K100 at the time, and it was kind of a rock pop hybrid kind of station, and then he was there for a couple of years, and then he got a gig at Kiss FM, which was the big pop station in LA, and then at that point, AJ and I were probably 9 and 11, and in those years, and our dad was on the biggest radio station in LA, and so that was kind of different and kind of neat, but we were definitely exposed. Our whole childhood was just constant exposure to different kinds of music.
Right. And so wasn't it around this age that your cousin took you to see, was it like AC/DC and Ted Nugent and Black Sabbath? He took you to see Iron Maiden and UFO, but that led to you getting into all that other kind of like more rock stuff, right?
All right. And yeah, so he was kind of our, it's actually ironic that you bring him up because I think today would have been his birthday. He passed away a couple years ago, but
sorry to hear that.
Popped up on my Facebook today that it was his birthday. But his name was Brett, and he was like the older cousin that had like, he had the cool room,
cool
with
cousin,
like black lights and cool posters and shit. And he was several years older than us, so he was really into Black Sabbath and Ted Nugent and Ozzy and kind of the early metal, but he also turned us on to Maiden. And I remember he turned us on to Queensryche, and it was like the 4-song EP that, when they first came out, and we went and got that. And we were like, we were really into Queensryche. We were into Def Leppard when it was, On Through the Night and High and Dry, like, before Pyromania or any of their, cause he was, he had the subscription to Circus Magazine and to, and Hit Parader, and he would be sort of the guy who just, I think all he spent his money on was records,
right?
And posters and concert shirts and stuff. And so And yeah, that's what started the whole heavy metal years.
And then
us.
you started getting into that stuff too. And you were talking about, and this is cool because I think, we're going to kind of date ourselves, but like going to Tower Records, like that experience, I heard you talking about that, like going out and checking out records and magazines. Is that how you discovered a lot of music, being able to go? Because back in those days, you couldn't go on Spotify or YouTube. Sometimes you just had to blindly buy a CD and hope that maybe you heard one song on the radio. Is that how you would discover music? Or like, I remember too, like reading in magazines about an album and then just blindly checking it out.
It was, yeah. I mean, I remember there was a record store near our house in Anaheim called Peer Records. And we would ride our bikes down there, and Motley Crue, Too Fast for Love was in like its own little cardboard box stand thing that they had made, and they were selling them for $5, and it was on their own label called like Leather Records.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so I bought that album for $5, the original vinyl version. It's just because I thought it looked cool. You know?
It did.
And that was kind of the thing, like you would, I mean, we're kids, and $10 was a lot of money back then. And so it was really kind of a battle of who had the coolest looking cover, or who on the back cover, like who looked the coolest. Sometimes that was the deciding factor of which record you went home with.
For sure. So then you started out playing the piano, but then like you saw there was like this like hot guitar teacher that was like there at the same lady's house. So then you started taking guitar, and then obviously you fell into that music. So you were saying that when you first started, you liked Randy Rhoads and stuff, but you couldn't play that. So then you decide, okay, I'll start writing my own music. Can you play that stuff now, or is it still a challenge?
No, I can't.
I like the honesty.
I was taking, it was organ lessons. My grandfather played the organ, and he had it in his living room, and he was a huge influence on us musically. He was a jazz musician, and he sang, played organ. He was a drummer and everything. But you weren't allowed to touch his organ if you didn't know how to play it properly.
Oh, okay.
And so he bought me a little chord organ, like a little kid's organ with a little songbook, and it was in the bedroom, like the playroom. And I went in that playroom, and I like mastered that songbook on this little kid's organ, and convinced him to, and then so he bought me an organ. He bought me a Wurlitzer organ, and so I started taking organ lessons, and it was really cool. And in retrospect, I really wish I would have stuck with the organ for a couple more years, because I would have loved to have been better at it. But yeah, I had this old teacher. She was a real nice lady, but she was an older lady, and she was very militant. Like she was very. I play by ear. Like I'm a self-taught guitar player and a self-taught musician. So I would hear these songs, and I would just figure them out. And I wasn't playing them correctly, but I was playing them because what I heard. And she would know when I was bullshitting her, because I wouldn't turn the page in the middle of a song. I would just keep playing the song. And so the lesson part of it was very like unenjoyable for me.
Right.
Because I just wanted to play, and I was kind of impatient. And then, she had this hot daughter that taught guitar lessons upstairs. So I would see these kids with their guitar cases walking upstairs, into what I just imagined, my
Stairway to Heaven.
My 7 years old brain, like, what are they doing? It must be awesome up there, And then, and then I started getting into heavy metal. I was just like, I got to figure out guitar. And then what really kind of pushed me off the cliff was, at the time, all I really gave a shit was BMX and riding my bike with my friends. And we would leave, our parents were divorced. We were total latchkey kids. And my dad was on the radio in the afternoons, and the station was in Hollywood. We lived in the Inland Empire at the time. And so, he would drive an hour to work, and then he'd be on the air, and then he would drive an hour back, and he wouldn't come home till like 10 o'clock at night. So from school getting out till 10 o'clock at night, we were just like, we were like raised by wolves, And so we would just literally ride our bikes from school to wherever the newest, coolest jump was, or, you know, or to the arcade. And we were just like this gang of kids that just would jump shit and just build tracks and do all that. And then my bike got stolen at an arcade.
Oh.
And it was like someone just pulled the rug out from under me. And all my friends still every day went. And, you know, and my parents were like, sorry, you're shit out of luck, you know.
Wow.
There was no new bike in it for me, you know. So, so I started coming home from school every day and just sitting on the edge of my bed with this piece of shit hand-me-down electric guitar that someone had given me that, you know, barely stayed in tune, sounded terrible, but it sounded just terrible enough that it kind of got distorted with this little crazy amp that, you know, that it came with, and which actually eventually caught on fire in my bedroom. And I had to throw it out the bedroom window so it didn't catch anything else on fire. But
that's scary. So you started playing in bands, and obviously your brother is the singer. So tell me about how you came across the bass player, Kevin, because he was into kind of more of the lighter bands like Journey and Dokken, and you guys were into more of the heavier stuff like Maiden. You kind of compared him to Stuart from Beavis and Butthead, the guy that wore like the winger shirt.
We've always compared him to Stuart since that came out. We were always like, dude, that's Kevin.
But yeah, you still wanted him to be in your band. So there must have been something there that you saw.
Well, it's funny. So he lived in the neighborhood behind my best friend, Tony, and we all went to the same junior high. Kevin was like a year between me and AJ. So,
okay.
When I was in 8th grade, he was in 7th grade, and Tony lived in these apartments right on the edge of this neighborhood. And Kevin would come over. He was only a year younger than me, but he looked like he was 5 years younger than me. I mean, you know, he was like a small kid, you know.
Okay.
And he would come over and he would come over to trade pictures. We would tear pictures out of like Metal Edge magazine and Circus and stuff. And he would trade us like the Maiden stuff for like the Dokken stuff and the, you know, and his thing was definitely Van Halen and Kiss, you know?
Okay.
And so that's how we got to know each other. And then when my brother got to junior high, they became friends. And we all were before we ever stood in a room and played music together, like we used to go to concerts together.
Okay.
And we would go to each other's houses and play records and just, you know, make up fake band logos and stuff.
Oh,
and just
nice.
And so we were all bros like through music before we started playing music. And then I actually started playing. I was 16 or I was 15 when I was in my first band, but I was in a band with dudes that were in their early 20s, and I was playing bars, you know, a couple nights a week when I was 16 years old, like, you know, junior in high school.
Yeah. You dropped out, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I dropped out kind of out of necessity, just because I was showing up to school like at noon.
Tired. Yeah.
You know, hungover and tired. And I was like living this other secret life, you know, and then I'm coming in and I'm, you know, listening to morning announcements and the principal and the counselors. I'm like, what the fuck? Yeah.
So then you guys start this band Razzle, which I scoured the internet, YouTube. I can't find any clips or pictures. But this was during the heyday of the 80s, the Warrants and the Skid Rows and the Guns N' Roses. Yeah. And you guys were popular.
Thank God they didn't have camera phones back then. or YouTube.
But you're selling out clubs in Hollywood. So tell me about those days and that scene of the Sunset Strip, because you're seeing these members of the bands like walking around and stuff. Didn't you say that you had a conversation with Izzy Stradlin from Guns N' Roses about guitars?
I did. Yeah. So there was nowhere to play in Orange County. There was no, at the time, you know, being basically high school kids or fresh out of high school, there were no rock clubs in Orange County, and the couple that there were either 18 and over or 21 and over. But the Strip in Hollywood, you know, Gazzari's and the Whiskey and the Roxy and the Troubadour, they were all ages. So if we wanted to play a gig and have our friends come, it had to be one of those places. So, and it was during that time when it was just a crazy party every weekend. Like in those days, you know, like 87, 88, like those years, nobody ever never called your friend and said, what are you doing on Friday? Because we just always went to the strip. So every Friday and every Saturday, we would meet at someone's house and we would all pile into a car. We'd leave around 9:30 and we'd show up to the strip around, 11. And from 11 to 2 or 2:30, we just walk up and down the strip and just run into people in vans and promote and flyer. And it was like, it was like a contest to see who had the biggest and brightest and, craziest flyers. And,
right.
And it was just guerrilla marketing, the original rawest, purest form of social media, because it was just literally hand-to-hand combat. You were just trying to get someone to take your flyer, look at it, not drop it. And hopefully if it was like a cute girl, she would, maybe write her number on it or, put it in her purse or whatever. But it was really like, it's crazy to look back on that time, because at any given night, there was maybe 2,000 or 3,000 people on this like 3-block stretch of road on the sidewalk. There were more people on the sidewalk
because they couldn't get into the clubs.
But out of those 2,000, 3,000 people, there was probably 100 bands doing the same thing, so it's wild to think about.
Yeah. Which bands were you friends with of that era that are bands that maybe people have heard of, like major label bands? Were you good friends with any of those, like hair bands, I guess you'd call them?
We definitely saw Warrant a few times in the clubs before they were signed.
Okay.
They were like, we were just starting out and they were like, crushing it. And
okay.
They were just about to get signed. And so we saw them a few times and they were great. We saw a lot of the dudes still hung around. You'd always see you always saw people hanging out at the Rainbow. You always saw Lemmy, and you always saw, Guns N' Roses guys and different, Motley Crue guys. I mean, you always saw people. They just always ended up coming back to the strip, and you'd catch glimpses and you'd see. And then bands that were making it from other parts of the country would go hang out there just to see it, just to check it out, because it was like the mecca, of hair music,
Right.
And so you might be hanging out on the strip one night and just see like, whoever hanging out, but they're from frickin' Wisconsin, but they're just here going like, whoa, man, this is crazy.
Yeah,
so
totally.
We didn't really run with very many of them because we were kids, we were like, we ended up kind of being like, a lot of the older guys and the older bands from Hollywood thought we were like rich kids from Orange County. They thought our parents like bought us all our gear and were paying for our full page ads and our flyers, but they didn't realize like, we were the opposite. We were broke kids that were just fucking relentless. And, we would go to construction sites and steal wood and build like ramps and stuff for the stage. And we would like, hand paint giant backdrops and just like, we were just trying to be like,
a band. Yeah.
Just trying to act like our heroes and eventually like, we were selling out. We were what, I mean, I don't think we ever headlined a show in Hollywood that wasn't sold out. I think by the time we opened up for enough people and worked our way to a Friday or a Saturday night when they would give us that time of day, I think it was, they were always sold out. And so it was an awesome, fun time. Good. It was our college basically.
For sure. But so then this is pretty ballsy. So in 91, cause like Nirvana and Pearl Jam, all this stuff's coming out, you scrap Razzle, you get rid of the name, the songs, the mailing list, so all your contacts and everything, all your fans. And the music was changing, but this seems like such a ballsy move. Was anyone at the time saying, hey, maybe we should at least keep the mailing list and let our fans know that we're going to do something different, and maybe the old fans would like the new stuff? Or like, what was the strategy behind just scrapping everything?
I think we just didn't want any ties to, it wasn't that we had like jumped on some sort of bandwagon because music was changing. The reality was we had changed tremendously from being, 16 and not knowing how to play your instrument to being 19 and selling out the Roxy in a band, to being 21 and going, dude, I fucking love Nirvana. I love Stone Temple Pilots.
Yeah.
I don't love White Lion. I don't love fucking, some of these bands in Metal Edge. And it's starting to become a little bit of a parody of itself. Why the fuck would we, keep doing this? It's like, it was fun and it was awesome. And I love those times. I love a lot of those bands. I mean, Lit has been waving that flag since day one. We've always what's cool is like, we're friends with a lot of those guys now. Like, we're friends with the Warrant guys. I was friends with Janie, we became good buds over the years. And, I was trying to convince him for a long time to come to Nashville to write. And,
he would have been great there.
But like Kevin is like, he's like best friends with Joey Allen. Their kids go to school together. We're friends with, we're friends with so many dudes, like the Skid Row guys, and just like, there's just a lot of those guys from that era that are our boys now. Odin was another huge band on the Sunset Strip, and they never like made it. They made a couple records, and regionally they were huge. For me, they were everything. I fucking love that band. But Jeff Duncan is in Armored Saint now, and I think Sean, his brother, is in Bull. It was in Bullet Boys and a couple other things. But Randy O, the singer, when I was 15, like that guy was like fucking, one of the best frontmen on the planet. And just recently he was here at my Nashville house with his family, and he came and they stayed for a few days. And it's wild, the people that we loved and admired when we were teenagers, and then later, I think because we were so openly like waving that flag, like, hey, here's where we come from. A lot of those bands, and they maybe liked My Worst Enemy when they first heard it on the radio, and so they were like, oh, that's cool. Oh, fuck, and they like our shit too, like rap.
Right? Yeah, that's great.
Somewhere we'd meet at some festival or whatever, and it was
that's very cool. Yeah, so you changed the name to Stain, and then eventually to Lit. But I heard you talking about this. This is kind of interesting, just kind of how you had different goals and like milestones. It was kind of refreshing to hear you say this, like, you're first performing, there's like a show with 80 people and you're thinking, what if we could double that? Like, and then what if we get a record deal? And you had these kind of different milestones. Do you think that mindset like helped contribute to your success? Or is it unusual to have that mindset? In other words, like, do most successful musicians kind of think that way of having these milestones, or a lot of musicians more like, well, I'm just doing it for the art, and if it's popular, great, and I don't care?
Man, I don't know. Using that concept, that mentality is pretty, for a group of kids to think of that is kind of forward thinking. Hearing you say that, I'm kind of thinking like, that's a good philosophy and a good principle for anything in life, right?
Right.
Like for business, for anything. It's almost like Grant Cardone, the 10X. The 10X theory.
Love that guy.
If something's working, just do it 10 times, right? And I think that's what I think we were such fans of music. We were rehearsing 3-4 nights a week, and then we would play a show, and we would have our shows videotaped, and then we would meet at someone's house the next day, and we would watch and critique the show, and we would figure out what we needed to work on more and what didn't look right or feel right. And we did that with Lit too. But I think we were just such fans of concerts that we were like, if we're going to do this, we want to do that. We want to play concerts. And, there's no fun in playing a concert in front of 3 people.
Right.
So, and also, to be honest with you, like, I'm a self-taught guitar player. Kevin's a self-taught bass player. None of us have any formal training whatsoever. And so it's kind of like we never were in it for, of course we're in it for the music, but we were never in it for like the art of music. Like, we were always in it for the party, for the fun, for the catchiness, for the hour and 15 minutes or hour and a half that you're at the show. You're not thinking about other shit,
Right. Yeah, no, that's really cool. So then eventually you get signed by RCA. They turned you down a couple times, but on the third time they finally sign you. And obviously, you know, you have the big hit with My Own Worst Enemy, which I found it interesting that it was about like AJ had an old car with a broken fuel gauge, and he had to write down the mileage so he wouldn't run out of gas. And so that's how he came up with the line, "No surprise to me, I'm my own worst enemy, because every now and then I kick the living shit out of me." And then it worked with that kind of poppy feel, but it could have been a darker song, right? Because based on the lyrics.
Yeah, that was the only line he had written, and it was he had a little notepad in the front seat of his car. He had an old like '63 Cadillac, and the gas gauge didn't work. So yeah, he would put 5 gallons of gas in his car, and he would go, "All right, I've got 45 miles, you know, in my tank," and he would write down his you know, odometer, and then he would have to do the subtraction to know when he needed to get gas again. And it was because he had that notepad on his front seat with a pen, that's when he wrote that thing down. And so there's literally, he has it still, but it's just a scrap of paper that says that, and it's torn off the page of his gas, you know, log. But yeah, and then that was just a song we wrote one night at band practice. It just sort of happened in a relatively short time, and it was just one of a batch of songs that we were just kind of in a zone, if you will. You know, we wrote, because there's A Place in the Sun is a really different sounding record than Tripping the Light Fantastic, which was our first album.
It's more heavy, yeah.
A lot more heavy, a lot more experimental. And then we kind of just honed in on this thing, and yeah, man, I don't know. Wow.
And then the Miserable song, that was a really popular song that was played live. So then you guys were going to make it a single and a video. And this is kind of interesting because you wanted to do kind of like a live concert thing, and you had all these like people pitching you ideas, and you thought the idea of the giant woman was terrible. But then you worked out a deal. Well, if you can get Pamela Anderson to do it, do you think that she gave you guys a spark of popularity at the time?
Absolutely. You know, she exposed us to a whole different audience, because we, you know, while we were filming that video, you know, Entertainment Tonight stopped by, and you know, that got coverage on shows that wouldn't normally cover a rock band.
Right.
But they would damn well cover her. And it also, yeah. You know, it wasn't like she was available for hire for music videos, you know? So it was odd that she was doing that.
Well, she was a fan of the band, right? Because she had you on her show, the VIP and all that stuff, right? You guys made a cameo.
Right.
Did you get to hang out?
Yeah, it just happened to work out that way. And you know, and it was a worldwide thing too, which was great. And it actually, that song, even though the song only went to number 3, it stayed on the charts for like almost an entire year, and it made the record. The record had gone off of the charts for 1 week, and then it came back on the charts and stayed back on the charts for like another year.
Oh.
So it really was like that song and that video and the exposure that it got was, it was like, it really like kicked that whole campaign into like, it extended it a whole other year.
Right.
You know?
So tell me what that was like to go from, you know, playing these smaller shows at the Whiskey, but still popular, but now you're playing festivals with Ozzy and the Foo Fighters and STP and all these bands that you were fans of, and seeing your videos on TRL and stuff. I mean, it must have been kind of mind blowing, right?
It was very mind blowing, because to be on TRL with Carson Daly, having been watching TRL with Carson Daly just a year or two before that, or I'll never forget the first time, I think the debut of Enemy on MTV was on 120 Minutes, and like Matt Pinfield was interviewing us.
Oh, I remember him. Yeah.
And the whole time we were just like, fucking Matt Pinfield, dude. Like, whoa.
Yeah.
And we're like, and he's like, so guys, and he knew a lot of facts about us then, like you're saying, you know, like we're talking and you're going, so I heard this or that. Matt Pinfield would say that, and we would just sit there and go, are you fucking serious, dude? Like, you fucking know that, man?
Yeah.
Like, whoa. And it was moments like that, you know, and being like MTV Spring Break and doing that kind of shit, when we were just literally watching it a year before on our couches and just going, wow, that's so cool. That was fucking mind blowing. We always say, you know, we always say now that we wish we could go back and do it a little bit slower and take more pictures and just soak it in a little more, because, you know, when you saw MTV Spring Break and you saw Carmen Electra dancing with AJ on the thing, and we're on the ocean, and look, and people are partying and girls are getting naked, and it's just fucking amazing.
Yeah.
Rock and roll,
the lifestyle, the dream,
MTV debauchery, and you know, Paris Hilton's hanging out, and you know, all this shit. It's crazy. But we had to fucking leave like an hour after that and catch a private plane to go play the second stage at a radio festival in Pittsburgh. So imagine dancing with Carmen Electra, partying with Paris Hilton and Mandy Moore at a fucking 5-star resort in Cancun, and then having to leave that because in 5 hours we got to be on stage in Pittsburgh.
Who scheduled that? Who's the tour manager that fucked that? That sounds like a fuck up on the tour manager's part.
I mean, but it was just one of those things where we didn't want to miss a thing, and we didn't want to say no to anything. If we could cram it in somehow and make it, then we would do it, you know. But in retrospect, we missed a lot of it. Like, you know, people will ask, like, you know, what's it like having a song #1 for 11 weeks? And I'm like, I don't know. We were so fucking busy that the chart position of the song was the last thing we were thinking about.
Interesting.
We were thinking about, like, you know, we were learning how to take naps standing up, and, you know, we were literally just like going from here to here to here to here to here. And so it was wild. I mean,
so it's still like a job. I mean, you're working, you're busy. You're not just, you know, doing people just see a concert an hour and a half, like, oh, they only work an hour and a half a night. But no, you got a rehearsal and doing all this press and all this other stuff, right? Traveling.
When you have a single that's doing well on the radio, you are wanted in every town you go to. You're wanted by the morning show, and you're wanted by the afternoon show. Sometimes you're going from one station to another station. You're there to promote, obviously, your record and your show, but you're also there to give love back because they're playing your song.
Right.
And, you know, luckily in those days, that was before the meet and greet, because I don't know how we could have crammed that in. I mean, they had them, but it was more of a, like, now meet and greet's almost like part of the show.
Right. Yeah. It's a huge part. How you guys make money.
Buy a ticket for this, or you can meet the band for this, or you can do this. Back then it was more like we did meet and greets because we decided to go out and meet fans, or we would, you know, go do an in-store or go do something where we could be with, or go to the merch table and do that. Like, we kind of did our own meet and greets before they were a thing, but we didn't have time, you know. We just, later years, or even in between songs, when things would kind of mellow out a little bit, those were actually pretty cool, because you did get to a chance to, like, check out towns, you know, walk around and, like, you know, start discovering, like, your favorite restaurant in Chicago, or your favorite bar in this town, or whatever, and being able to actually go, hey, you remember that? Let's go to that spot. That place was awesome. Having a little bit of time to kind of explore and do that. And
okay.
AJ always did these things called danger walks before the show, where he would take a cab to, like, the shittiest part of town where it's, like, dangerous, and he would just go walking around. And I don't know.
That does sound like a danger walk.
He did it all by himself, man. I never went with him, but
wow.
He like did it to kind of like get in the zone before the show. It was a fucking weird thing.
That's crazy. So then the next record, Atomic, you guys got to tour with Kid Rock and Butch Walker on that one. But this was cool that I didn't know this. Steven Tyler, he sang backup on Over My Head. Was that just a happy accident? Like, he happened to be recording nearby, or how did that come about?
Well, that song came about. We were literally touring. I mean, we were on the road in '99. We probably did 300 shows in '99, and
crazy,
traveling almost constantly. I think we only had like 3 weeks off total that whole year, and I mean 3 weeks in the sense of like 21 days, but they were peppered in throughout the year. So we got hit up to do the soundtrack, And they called me and asked me if I would write a song for this movie soundtrack. And I immediately said no. I was like, not interested. I don't have time. I'm sorry. And we're not one of those bands that writes well when we're on the road, because we're kind of like, we're in writing mode, or we're in recording mode, or we're in road mode. But
okay,
we're not good at all of them. Like, you know, God bless. A lot of people are. They do a lot of writing on the bus and they record. They have their rigs out, but we're a little easily distracted, I guess. But so I was just like, man, I don't have the time, you know. And then they threw the number out that they were willing to pay. And I was like, oh shit. Oh yeah. Okay. I'll do it. And then they sent me basically like a teaser and a script. And they told me what the movie was about. I'm like, this is fucking easy now. Like, you just get, you know, for a songwriter, when you basically tell them what the song's going to be about and what the tempo is and how you want it and all that shit, you take all the guesswork out, and then it's just a matter of trying to write a great song about it. But you're not sitting around going, what are we writing? What do you want to talk about? What do you want to say? And the other reason that we said yes to it, not just the money, but that it was Glen Ballard producing it.
Oh yeah.
And we were like, oh fuck, we got to maybe work with Glen Ballard. That'd be amazing, you know? So I wrote that song in an afternoon at my apartment, and went to Glen Ballard's house, played it for him. He loved it. We chalked up a little demo, and then he was like, it's going to be the first single. We're doing it. And then we were like, fuck, we're leaving like next Thursday for the whatever tour that was. And he was like, all right, come to, what studio was that? Some famous studio in LA. And we went there on the day before we left, recorded drums at that studio. Then we hit the road, and the next day off we were in New York, and we met Glenn, flew out, we met him in the studio, and I laid the guitars down on that day off, and Kevin was there and did bass. And then, and so keep in mind, these are our days off. So now we're going on week 3 with no days off. And then week 3, we're in Boston, and it's vocal day.
Okay.
And we're fucking spent because we've been really like hitting it hard and
sure,
you know, working our ass off. So we go to the studio to meet Glenn. I think it was like 3:00 in the afternoon, and we get there and we're waiting. And 4:00 rolls around. We're like, what the fuck, man? And then like 4:30 rolls around, and we're like literally calling our manager. We're like, fucking Glenn, man, what the fuck? It's our fucking only day off. We're sitting here in a studio. Like, this is bullshit. Like, we should be like, hey, walking around Boston and, you know, or chilling out or whatever. And all of a sudden the door opens and fucking Glen Ballard walks in with Steven Tyler. And apparently they had been doing whatever they were doing, talking, shooting the shit. And that's why they're late. But immediately we were like, oh shit. And he was like, and Glenn is like, you know, he's like this very zen, calm soul. Like, I don't think that the entire time working with him, the energy level, it was never no bad energy ever got in the room with that guy. He's just like, it's hard to explain, but if you ever like hear him talk or see any interviews with him or whatever, it's just, he keeps the vibe just like this the whole time. And it's really fucking cool and amazing. But he was like, let's get some dinner. I'm like, okay. So he orders in a bunch of stuff and wine or whatever. And it's just the 4 of us and Glenn and Steven sitting around the dinner table at the recording studio. And Tyler's just telling stories, and we're all just sitting around like, tell us more, Uncle Steve. And then at some point, Glenn goes, hey, I tweaked this one part here. I want to play you this thing. And so he presses play. I think it was a fucking cassette even. maybe it wasn't that old. But he puts it in the thing. And so Tyler was like kind of rocking out to it, you know. And AJ goes, dude, you want to come in and sing some shit with me? And Steven was just like, yeah, man, fuck yeah. And that was when the whole room just went, no fucking way. And
that's cool.
he went in the room and he did all the high harmonies. I was like, fuck, and that means I got to sing these live. God damn.
That's right. Cause you're back. Oh God, that's rough.
But it was fun, man. He was such a cool guy.
So, yeah. So such a high. And then, but you guys had some tragedy around this time too. Your parents, your mom and your stepdad were on a Harley and got hit by a drunk driver. And then, so, I mean, you talk about having to slow down. You kind of were forced to slow down at this point, right? Because you had to help your mom for several months. And did your record label drop you like during this time or did you guys part because of this?
No, we actually parted. It's how it went down was we were after Atomic, we were writing these songs, making demos and basically working on what was going to become the self-titled, we call it the Black Album, but the self-titled record that came out in, I think, in 2005. And during that time, all our people left RCA. Our A&R guys were gone.
Okay.
The president had changed. The radio guys had changed. The entire team that we were going to have to work with was all new people, and it was like starting over. And we were pretty disappointed in how they had handled the Atomic record. And actually, those changes were actually happening during Atomic. So like during the Atomic campaign, we lost half of our team.
Oh.
And then after that record, we lost all of our team. So we were like, well, if we're going to have to, you guys kind of fucked up our last record.
Yeah. And
then if we're going to start from scratch with a new company, we may as well start with a new company.
Okay.
And so we were able to, we just respectfully and graciously asked for them to release us from our contract.
Gotcha.
And they, luckily enough, they did. I mean, in retrospect, maybe we should have just stayed and maybe the new team could have fucking killed it. I don't know. But at the time,
it does make you wonder though, because that 2004 or 2005, the self-titled album, I mean, those are some of my favorite Lit songs of all time. The Looks Like They Were Right, Forever Begins Right Now, Too Fast for a U-Turn. I mean, they're so catchy. And I was just like, I never for the life of me could understand why those were not bigger hits. Do you kind of agree with that? Or is that
just one of my favorite records? It's one of my favorite records.
I love it. Yeah.
And I think I was so proud of it. And we took a chance. We went with a brand new company that was founded by 3 guys that were from other labels.
Okay.
And on paper, it looked like a great idea, but they just didn't have the resources. They just didn't have the traction to push it over the finish line. And so looking back, I mean, we would have definitely played that hand differently, but then the accident happened. I can't remember if the accident happened before the record came out or after, but it was around that time.
Okay.
And we had to kind of not tour for a while because AJ and I had to take care of our mom. Our stepdad was killed in the accident, and our mom was just, she almost died, at the scene and then in the hospital, in the trauma center. And so, we were basically taking care of her for 4 or 5, 6 months in the hospital and taking turns and taking shifts and doing that. And then we started doing shows again. And then also out of that time is when I started coming to Nashville and writing country songs.
Right. Okay.
And that was, in a way, Nashville was my escape from the darkness of what had just happened.
Sure. And then you had, and then you had more darkness because your drummer, Alan, is diagnosed with brain cancer, which I'm still trying to figure out how he got cancer so young. Did they have any theories? Like, how do you get a brain tumor in your 30s? That's just like, you think it was like chemicals he was exposed to or something, or toxins?
Man, I'll tell you the craziest part about Al is that he was the guy in the band that never smoked, never did drugs, got up at 6 a.m. and went for a jog, played golf whenever he could. And during the time that and nobody really thinks that this is why, but his last couple of years, he had opened a couple of boxing gyms, and I don't think he was sparring. I don't think it was like, because his type of cancer wasn't the kind, because at the same time he had it, Ted Kennedy had it, remember when he had,
Okay.
they had the exact same type of brain cancer at the exact same time. They were diagnosed at the same time, and they passed away around the same time. It was really a trip, but it was, they don't know, they don't know what the cause of it was. It wasn't, he wasn't exposed to anything that we weren't all exposed to. And
So
out of the four of us, he was definitely the most healthy.
that's weird. So that definitely shifts your priorities. Like making music and touring is not the most important thing. But like I have a buddy right now and his brother has leukemia and he's really struggling. So like what advice would you give for someone that has a friend or family that has cancer? Like, how do you deal with that? That's gotta be one of the hardest things in the world to deal with.
Man, the craziest thing about cancer is it's like, there's so many different kinds, and there are some that there's just no, the odds are just not good, and there's some that have positive, outcomes, and it's like when you get the bad one, I don't know. I don't know how you do that. It's like somebody getting diagnosed with ALS. This is going to be the worst fucking thing that's ever happened on the planet. But what do? And I think all you can do is, it does make you realize that, you got to try to just spend time with them while you have them, and just appreciate.
And you did that. You guys canceled like a tour with Kiss. I think you canceled a lot of shows to spend more time with him, right?
Yeah. Well, what happened? So I was dating a girl in Nashville at the time, and we were going back and forth. And Al was living in Phoenix because he was opening a second boxing gym.
Okay.
And we were doing a Kiss tour in Europe, and so Al came back to Orange County and was staying at my house, and we had rehearsals before the tour. And I had just got back from Nashville, and Al actually picked me up at the airport, and we were driving back to Fullerton, back to my house, and he was like kind of like getting lost a little bit, and I was like, dude, you only been in Arizona for a few months, you already fucking forgot where you live. He's like, oh, it's weird, man. Sometimes I just like kind of space out, and I was just kind of chalked it up to like, oh, it's just, you're probably just stressed from the the new gym and all that. And then I got home, and the next morning, my girlfriend flipped her car in Nashville, and I had to jam back to Nashville to like take care of that. And so I was only back in Nashville for like 24 hours. But when I, and this is before they had Wi-Fi on the planes. So when I was up in the air for 4 hours, and when I landed, my phone was just lit up, and it was all my guys saying Al's in the hospital. And he went to Target to buy supplies for the tour. He went to buy, deodorant, toothpaste and shit. And when he was walking through Target, the whole left side of his body just went numb.
Oh, fuck.
And so he drove back to my house. And then when he got back to my house, he called Kevin, and Kevin drove him to the hospital. And then that's how that all started. So we waited. Then we got him, as soon as they said brain, we had him transferred to Cedars-Sinai, and had like the world renowned, brain guy working on him. And we just stayed by his side until we found out what it was. And then literally we were supposed to leave like 2 days later for the Kiss tour. And we had to bounce, because we were just like, dude, our boy just got this news, and yeah, gnarly, man.
Crazy. So, and unfortunately, that story doesn't have a happy ending. He passes. But so then you bring in Nathan Walker, who's the drum tech, and he takes over as the drummer. So is that like a dream come true for him though, in a way? Like does every drum and guitar tech, they want to play, right? Or do some actually like being techs?
How he became Al's tech was he was a drummer in a band that I had worked with. I was, producing stuff and writing stuff with other bands. And there was this girl singer, he was playing drums for her, and he was a killer drummer. And that's how, he was a great drummer, but he needed a job, so he Al hired him to be his tech and for a couple of tours. And, but yeah, I mean, sitting behind Al for however many shows that was. I mean, he knew the songs, he knew the
sure.
set,
Yeah.
he knew us, he knew he could live with us on a tour bus for weeks at a time. So, and he was actually in the room, we were all in the room when Al passed.
Right.
And he was there too. He was with us. So it was kind of like a passing of the torch in a
Yeah.
way. It took us about a month for it to dawn on us. Like it took us about a month of kind of just numbness and like, what now?
Yeah.
And then we kind of all met up at my bar, and we were just like, what do you think, dude? And he was like, man, I'm in. You know, before that, Adrian Young from No Doubt filled in. He did 3 or 4 shows with us. He filled in for Al, and then there was a couple shows where him and Al, we had 2 drum sets on stage.
Did Rich Redmond fill in a little bit too? I had him on the show. He's Jason Aldean's drummer.
He did, yeah. We did a show in Nashville.
I like him.
Rich did. He's one of the best, man.
Yeah, and then some other people. So the next album, View from the Bottom, you work with some really cool people. Marty Fredrickson, who's co-written songs with Aerosmith and Motley Crue, and then Butch Walker produced that album. And that guy's so fascinating to me just because he's worked with so many big name artists. Like, what do you think that guy's secret to success is?
It's fun. I was just at his house a couple days ago. He's
out here. Really?
Yeah, he's out here in Nashville now.
Okay. Tell him to check his messages. He's got to do my show. I got to have that guy.
Honestly, his recipe for success is the old fashioned one, man. It's just that he's so fucking talented, and he's very, very disciplined and hardworking.
Oh.
There's really no, there's no,
he's got it both.
There's not a lot of luck involved with that. That's just pure fucking talent and hard work. And
yeah, because he could, if you look at his like discography, I mean, the number of things that he produces, plus he's a solo artist, plus he co-writes. I mean, he's all over the place. He must just not sleep.
He's up early and he's up late.
Yeah.
And, but he's always been that way. You know, Butch almost produced the Atomic record.
Oh, okay.
And we pushed for it, but the label said he wasn't a big enough name producer. But at the time, he hadn't produced anything yet.
Okay, but now,
his own records. But.
Yeah, he's huge now. So then you guys, this is interesting, the 2017 album, These Are the Days, you go into country rock. And this is good stuff. I'm really amazed at how much I like these songs. Very well written, produced, and performed. And you're very proud of this record, but you also understand how it's a little bit confusing for lit fans and for country fans. So now you guys have the Popoff Brothers, which is a strict country rock band, right?
Well, we don't know yet. Because we had started writing, AJ and I had written and recorded like 5 or 6 new songs. And we were listening to them and we were like, man, we're getting further away from lit, you know, but these are great. And we love this, but let's just rip the Band-Aid off and let's just let lit be lit. And when we write a song that we love, that's completely not lit, we've got a new vehicle to release it, whether it's country, Americana, or fucking disco or whatever. And there's no expectations and there's no pressure. And, you know, we may throw out a turd or we may throw out something that people really love.
Yeah, the song I heard, The Sons and Daughters of Summer, everyone should check that out right now. It's the only song from the Popoff Brothers moniker, but it's a great song. So I look forward to more stuff like that.
Thanks, man. Yeah, we have some good ones in the can, and we've got another one that we're ready to put out, but we've been really focused. This new lit record has been our focus, and it's raw. It's jamming. It sounds like, you know, it sounds like it could have come out between Atomic and the Black Album. You know, it's
I like it.
It's old school.
Can you tell me anything else? Is there any song titles or ideas that are concepts or anything? Or,
I mean, one of the first things we said, because we just signed a new record deal and this thing's coming out. We'll have a song out hopefully in spring, if not, very beginning of summer. And we we've been working with actually Marty Fredrickson's back in the mix.
Oh, nice.
And we've been working with these guys, Carlo and Eric, who, Nashville's such a talented town, and there's so many great artists and writers and collaborators and producers, and it's, we really found a couple of them that really kind of jived with what we're up to, and we've got some stuff coming up with some other guys. But AJ and I just love that collaborative process, and one of the, we don't have any rules, but one of the first things we said when we set out to start making this record was, if we wouldn't have set, we want universal themed song. We don't want to talk about politics. We certainly don't want to talk about COVID.
Okay.
And, we want to make a lit record, and of course, A Place in the Sun, Atomic, the Black Album, View from the Bottom, it touches on, hey man, let's party. Hey, why'd you break up with me? Hey, let's go fuck somewhere. Hey, this car is awesome. Like, whatever. But I'm sure we'll end up going to a couple of dark places, but for the most part, we just want to put out a fucking fun record.
Yeah, for sure.
And a timeless record. I want it to be like, I want the subject matter to just be like, it doesn't matter what year it is or what time it is or what.
A fun record would be good, right? This is a good time for a fun record to come out. There's enough dark shit in the world. So that's good. I like that idea. That's great.
Yeah.
Do you ever hear like your song, My Own Worst Enemy? Do you ever hear that like at karaoke? I feel like that's one of the most done songs during karaoke. Are you ever at a bar and hear someone doing that karaoke, or does AJ ever get up there and sing it for karaoke as a joke, or?
Yes.
Oh, really?
It happens all the time, especially here in Nashville. Well, any bar we go to, there's especially if you go down to Broadway, there's cover bands. There's 3 levels or 4 levels.
Yes.
There's a cover band on every level.
Yes, I love Nashville.
Every one of them plays it.
Yeah.
And so don't get me wrong, it's very flattering, but and we love it. And sometimes we will get up and play it with the band.
That's cool.
If they recognize us and ask us to do it, we always say yes.
That's awesome.
But a lot of times they don't know we're there, and they're just playing it because it's in their fucking set list, And,
that's hilarious.
And a lot of times we look around like, someone fucking with us.
That's funny.
It's one of those songs that, for whatever reason, has just crossed genres and crossed decades, and it's just still. We don't know. Like, it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't. There's no rhyme or reason for it. I've said it in a couple interviews. Like, the song itself breaks all the rules. There's nothing rhymes. There's no bridge.
Yeah.
There's barely a guitar solo. It's just a fucking why it became what it became. Why it still is what it still is. There's just no explanation for it. But it's just been a blessing, and it's just been an amazing thing to be a part of, and a wild ride.
So you discover bands like through other bands a lot. Like, I know you're talking about like you like Iron Maiden, so you wanted to listen to like who they were influenced by. Is there any other under the radar bands, like you're in Nashville, that you want to shine a light on now? Like any bands that people should check out that maybe aren't as big and maybe should be bigger? I know you like the band Dig. I know you've mentioned that one a few times. Anyone else though?
Dig was a huge influence on us in the 90s, and like they had a record. I think their record came out, I don't know, maybe like 96 or something, 97, somewhere around the mid to the 90s, where we were fucking really into that band, and they just, I think, just started putting out new music, which I'm super pumped to check out. But as far as like new, God, a lot of my friends are probably going to kick my ass for not. There's so many bands that should have been huge back in the day that influenced us that just didn't make it to the finish line that were big influences on us. But now, I mean, I'll be honest with you, I haven't heard. I just haven't heard much in a long time that in the rock world. Like,
Okay.
I don't listen to a lot of rock radio because it's all old stuff. And then the new, which there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
But it's like, I don't know. I haven't discovered anybody new that, actually I take that back. There's this guy, I don't know if it's him or it's his band, whatever, but Blame My Youth. And
Okay.
he has a song called Fantastic.
Oh,
That's fucking really, really great.
okay. I'll check that out.
It's one that I heard that I was like, holy shit. And I fucking had it on repeat. And I'm hoping to hook up with him. Me and AJ are really we want to hook up with this guy and maybe collaborate. But that's kind of one of the first things that's blown me away in a long time. But other genre wise, I mean, country wise, Haley Witters, I fucking love her new record. And there's a girl who is a pop singer in Nashville who I think is going to be massive. Her name's Taylor, and she's super hot and super edgy and super cool, and her songs are fucking amazing. And I think that she'll be one of those girls that you'll see carrying a bunch of trophies in a couple years away from the award show.
Her name's just Taylor?
I think Haley Witters is going to be the same. I think Haley Witters is going to be massive in the country world. And
what is this girl named Taylor, though? You said just one name, like Madonna?
Yeah. It's
okay.
Taela.
Okay. Very cool. Do you run into a lot of big name people in Nashville and Hollywood? And I heard you tell some pretty cool stories. Like you got to like hang out with Vince Vaughn at the premiere of one of his movies. That sounds pretty cool.
That was awesome. We were big fans of obviously of Swingers and people would ask us in interviews back in '99. They would say, "How would you describe your band?" And to someone that's never heard your music, I would say, "Well, we're somewhere between Swingers and Spinal Tap."
Yeah, that's great.
So, yeah, we're big fans of those guys. Here in I mean, honestly, it would just sound like a name drop-a-thon, but here in Nashville, nobody gives a shit. I mean, I got famous people come over to the house all the time and vice versa. And we hang out at bars together all the time. And guys that you see on TV, this neighborhood's just crazy. And to drive through it, just like a normal neighborhood. But Nashville has just become where everybody's
Mecca, right?
If they're not here yet, they're on their way.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's really cool. I only went once. But I went during the NFL draft. I don't know if you were there during that time, but it was, and I kept asking everybody, is it always like this? And they said, oh yeah, it's like this every weekend.
Yeah.
Crazy. So,
I was here when they were building the stage for that.
Oh.
And thank God I left during it because it was it was an absolute shit show.
It was, yeah.
It was amazing. But yeah, before COVID, Broadway would have 100,000 people in the street for 4th of July and for New Year's Eve and for CMA Fest and for all this stuff. I mean, Nashville, when it comes to throwing parties, it just doesn't fuck around.
No, for sure. Nobody you knew was hurt during that bombing or whatever that happened a couple weeks ago, right?
No, I didn't know anybody. I knew a guy who had a little bit of damage done to his shop, and he had to stay out of it for like a week and a half.
Okay.
Travis Austin, he does like custom jackets and hats and stuff. It woke us up. I mean, shit, we're only
you could hear it.
Blocks. We heard it. We were up pretty late the night before, having some cocktails with some friends, and it was it was Christmas morning.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's right.
My wife and I were asleep, and it was snowing the night before. And it was early in the morning. It was well before we wake up usually, and we heard the explosion, and we both like lifted our heads off the pillow. And I looked out the window, and it was light outside, but it wasn't storming. It wasn't raining. And I said, like, what the fuck was that? I'm like, is that thunder? She was like, I don't know. We're like, oh, okay, we're back to bed, And then we woke up a couple hours later and turned on the TV, and it was all over the place. But that's everything in Nashville too. Is it's like, I mean, we live in a, it's a city, so it's not unusual. There's construction going on. There's the occasional gunshot. it's not
Sure.
weird to hear a loud noise.
Right.
So the last thing I thought was like,
Right.
oh fuck, that sounded like a bomb.
Yeah, that's freaking crazy. So, hey, this was a cool story too, that when you guys were recording Atomic, you rented a mansion in the Hollywood Hills and you were across from Tarantino, and you guys went and kept like ringing his doorbell trying to get a hold of him. Now you never saw him then. Did you ever meet him later, or is that still on your bucket list?
Never met him.
Wouldn't that be so cool? My bucket list, I want to watch movies with Quentin Tarantino and Rob Zombie. Wouldn't that be like the best night ever?
I mean, and the thing is, we knew he was there too, because someone.
Oh, he was in that. You knew he was in the house.
He was there.
He was ignoring you.
The cameras were fucking on us, and he was just like, I don't know where the fuck these kids are.
Oh, that's too bad.
He had the property across the street from the mansion that we had was like on top of this hill, and it was a big property, and he had like this other structure. It wasn't the main house. It was like this other structure on the property. And I want to say it was a basketball court, but it was something. And Counting Crows were in there recording a record. And so people were coming and going, and we were like, we were hardly there. I mean, we had a couple of killer parties, but that was when we were there maybe 6 hours a day just to sleep. And I was producing a record at the time, and then making the Lit record and doing, we were
busy.
That's another one of those times that I wish we could have just
slowed it down,
or rented it for 2 weeks longer and just chilled by the pool for like a little while. But
that's an interesting thing to have on this fast ride that you had of being in this crazy band Lit that did all these amazing things, is that you wish you could slow it down a little bit. It's good advice for younger bands, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird now with social media and everything else. Like younger bands that are blowing up now are it must be equally as because the demand is still there for all the other things, but it's like they're required to like constantly document and be accessible.
Right. Yeah.
And I don't know if that was how it was then. I think we may have just completely lost our minds.
Yeah, that would be crazy. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for doing this interview. A lot of ups and downs. This is a crazy story. I like listening to all this stuff. I do like to end with a charity. Is there a charity that you work with or you want to give a shout out to?
The charity that's always been closest to my heart is JDRF, the Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation.
Oh, okay.
And it's for anybody that has type 1 diabetes, they're probably very familiar with them.
Absolutely.
I think they're much more hands-on and research-oriented and much more community outreach than, say, like the American Diabetes Association or something. But JDRF,
why is that one
great? Because when if you're 12 years old and you get it and you think life is fucked, or if you're a parent and your 8-year-old gets it and you're like, holy shit, what did we do wrong? Or is our kid going to die or whatever? JDRF has a lot of great community outreach and a lot of great programs. And they really, they really do a lot of great things for
That's
that.
awesome.
And
did you know somebody with diabetes?
My son's mother, my ex-wife, has it.
Okay.
And, she almost died twice while she was pregnant with my son from just really like hardcore crashes, low blood sugar.
Yeah.
And she's doing great now, and he's doing awesome, and everybody's awesome.
But
I've always just had I think that there could be a cure for that disease in our lifetime.
That would be nice.
And I think that they'll be on the forefront of that. So
awesome.
that's kind of my jam.
Okay.
And of course, dog stuff, I always support animal charities and your local Humane Society.
Yes, absolutely.
And no kill shelters and all that kind of stuff I'm a sucker for that. I love dogs. I just got a new puppy. So.
Oh, cool. What kind of puppy?
I just got a little female boxer.
Okay. Nice.
We had a boxer she was our little princess, and we just lost her right before the holidays. So we had to replace the, when you're a dog person, you got dogs, and when one goes, it's like it throws off the fucking juju in the house, you know?
Right.
You gotta balance it back out. You know,
Yeah, it's like a hole, and that people don't realize, like when you're so used to having a pet around and then they're not around, it's like it's like a big hole in your life. It's weird.
It feels weird, man. It almost feels like, you know, it's like walking into your apartment one last time, make sure you didn't forget something when you're moving, and when you walk in and it's all empty and you're just like, whoa.
Yeah.
And that feeling is kind of like that the first time you come home and that dog's not there.
Yes. Yeah. I am a cat person, but yeah, same thing. I had my first pet. It was a cat, and he just passed away. And it was so weird. Cause like every day you come home and he's on the steps waiting for me, and he wasn't there. I'm like, this is weird. This is like really weird that he's not here. It's
well, get another one, man. There's so many out there that need
absolutely.
You know?
I'm thinking of getting a second one. So, well, thank you so much for doing this, Jeremy. I really appreciate it. Everyone should follow you and check out social media, and make sure that they check out the new Popoff Brothers and the new Lit album when it comes out.
Yeah, appreciate you, brother.
All right, thanks so much.
Anytime, man.
All right, bye-bye. So many good stories from Jeremy. I'll have to have him on again, or his brother AJ, because I'm looking forward to this new Lit record. I'm also really curious what will come out of the Popoff Brothers, because that stuff is solid too. The song I heard was great. Make sure you follow Jeremy on social media to keep up with him, and follow me too if you want to see what episodes I'll have coming up. If you like this episode, check out some of the other interviews I've done, like Robin Wilson from Gin Blossoms. I had on Krista Makes from Less Than Jake. And if you subscribe to the show on YouTube or Apple Podcasts, you'll be set for future episodes. If you want to support the show, you can like or share stuff on social media, or write me a nice review on iTunes. Thanks again for listening, and remember, shoot for the moon.